All right, buckle up, everybody, because today's deep dive takes us straight into one of those moments where history and mystery, well, they just kind of smash right into each other.
You know, it's really something, isn't it? The way these events, we're talking JFK, RFK, and MLK.
Huge figures.
Yeah, absolutely huge. The way their assassinations still have this grip on us decades later, and we're still trying to figure it all out.
And speaking of figuring things out, we are diving in at like the most perfect time because President Trump, just days into his second term, drops this executive order.
An executive order.
Yeah, demanding they release every single classified document they've got on these assassinations. Every single one. Didn't he, like, try to do this in his first term?
He did. Promised to release the files, but then held some back.
Right, national security, that whole thing, following Pompeo's advice back then, right? CIA director.
Exactly. It was all, we can't risk this getting out, could damage national security. But this time...
This time, it's, everything will be revealed. That's a direct quote. Straight from the order.
Strong words. Strong words. You know, it makes you wonder what's changed, doesn't it, between then and now? Why this sudden push for transparency?
Yeah, I mean, he's not exactly known for...
Well,
transparency.
he does have a way of keeping things close to the vest, that's for sure. But maybe he's had a change of heart. Maybe he truly believes that the American people deserve the truth, like he said in the order.
Okay, before we go down that rabbit hole, let's back up a sec. Just for anyone tuning in who maybe needs a little refresher, we're talking thousands of pages, right?
Yeah.
Classified documents, lots from the CIA, but who knows what else they've been holding on to all these years.
And it's not like this is all brand new information either. Over the years, they have released millions of pages related to these assassinations.
True. And some of that stuff has been pretty wild.
Oh yeah, wild is a good word for it.
Like, remember those CIA cables, the ones talking about Lee Harvey Oswald's trips?
To the Soviet and Cuban embassies in Mexico City.
Yeah, just weeks before JFK was killed. Talk about a peek behind the curtain of Cold War intrigue.
I mean, it's like a spy novel come to life. Gives you a glimpse into a time when tensions were so high, everything felt like it could tip over at any moment.
Okay, so we've got this executive order, potential mountain of secrets. I'm sure everyone's thinking the same thing. What are we going to find in these files? Is there some bombshell revelation just waiting to blow everything we thought we knew sky high?
Well, a lot of experts are thinking, maybe not. A lot of them believe that the biggest revelations, they're probably already out there.
What?
Always a but.
Right. There's got to be something juicy in there.
Well, even the skeptics, they'll admit sometimes it just takes one little detail, something seemingly insignificant that ends up being.
Like the key to the whole puzzle.
Exactly. Historian Larry Sabato, he called it the tiny tip of a much larger iceberg. Who knows what might be lurking beneath the surface? We're talking not just the CIA, but the FBI, maybe even the Secret Service. They all had their own pieces of this puzzle.
Okay, so time for some wild speculation. What are we hoping for? Evidence of a wider conspiracy, organized crime connections, government cover-ups. I mean, these are the kinds of questions that have been driving conspiracy theories for decades, right?
They have. And who knows, maybe some of them will finally be put to rest. Maybe these files will provide the missing pieces that confirm what really happened.
Or maybe they'll just throw more fuel on the fire.
Exactly. But one way or another, it's about transparency, isn't it? The public deserves to know the truth.
Totally. And speaking of truth and interesting connections, this whole thing gets even wilder when you consider who Trump just appointed as health secretary.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., right?
Yeah.
JFK's nephew. Now that's a fascinating twist.
Talk about a front row seat to history. And remember, RFK Jr., he's been pretty vocal about his doubts about the lone gunman theory in his uncle's assassination. Now he's in position of influence as these files are released.
And don't forget, Trump gave the pen he used to sign the order to an aide, specifically to give to RFK Jr. a symbolic gesture, for sure. But what does it mean?
Oh man, that's like throwing a match onto a powder keg.
This is already a complex and sensitive situation, and this just adds another layer of intrigue. Family legacies, personal beliefs, the weight of history.
Yeah.
It's all intertwined.
All right, so we've got this executive order, a potential mountain of documents, and more questions and answers. Let's talk timeline. The order lays down some pretty specific deadlines, right?
It does. 15 days for the intelligence community to come up with a plan for releasing those JFK files.
15 days. That's not much time. And what about RFK and MLK?
45 days for those files.
Yeah.
So we're talking weeks, potentially, before we start seeing these long hidden documents come to light.
So what does this all mean? Why should you, listening right now, care about what might be tucked away in those files. It's easy to get lost in all the political stuff and the conspiracies, but, we can't forget these were real people. Their lives were cut short.
Yeah, absolutely. And their impact is still felt today. JFK, RFK, MLK. I mean, these guys changed the world.
JFK, he was young, full of energy. He really did represent hope for a whole generation. And then, boom, everything changes.
It was like suddenly the world wasn't so safe anymore. That feeling of innocence, it just vanished.
And RFK picking up the torch, fighting for social justice, for equality. It felt like when he was assassinated, they were trying to silence that movement.
Yeah, it felt like a huge step backward. Like all that progress, it was in danger.
And MLK, I mean, what can you even say? A visionary leader pushing for a more just society. His assassination felt like an attack on the very idea of equality.
These weren't just political assassinations, they were cultural earthquakes. The whole country was shaken to its core.
And when something like that happens, it makes sense that people would look for answers, try to make sense of it all.
It's human nature, right? We want to believe there's a reason, some logic behind these seemingly random acts.
It's like we need to find a pattern in the chaos, otherwise it's just too much to handle.
And the fact that these were such public figures, people we felt like we knew, it made it even more personal, like we all lost someone close to us.
Yeah, like losing a family member. And thinking about RFK Jr., I mean, he is family. And now these files are coming out about his own uncle. What must that be like for him?
I can't even imagine. To have these deeply personal wounds potentially reopened, and in such a public way, it's got to be incredibly difficult.
And he's leading the Department of Health and Human Services. He's in a position of power, and now these secrets about his family are coming out.
It's a unique situation, for sure. Makes you wonder, what's he hoping to find in these files? Is there something specific he's looking for?
Yeah, is it closure? Or maybe confirmation of what he already believes. We can't know for sure, but it's definitely something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. It adds a whole other dimension to this story.
Okay, so we've talked about the human cost, the impact these assassinations had, but let's get back to the files themselves. What are the chances we'll actually find something groundbreaking in there? Something that, rewrites history?
It's tough to say. A lot of experts, they think the really big revelations are already out there.
But there's always a but.
Of course. That's what keeps things interesting. And, sometimes it's the smallest detail that changes everything. That one little piece of information that suddenly makes the whole picture clear.
Like finding the missing puzzle piece.
Exactly. And we're talking about thousands of documents here, millions of words. Who knows what could be buried in there? Witness statements they never released, internal memos that were suppressed, maybe even transcripts of phone calls.
Okay, so let's say we do find something major, something that proves there was a conspiracy or a cover-up. Then what? What happens next?
That's the big question, isn't it? I mean, it could bring closure for some people, validation for those who have always questioned the official story, maybe even lead to some kind of apology from the government.
Or it could just open up old wounds, reignite all those political divisions.
It's a double-edged sword, for sure. Impossible to predict how it would play out. But one thing's certain. It would be a huge news story. The whole world would be talking about it.
JFK conspiracy confirmed. That's the headline I can see. Or maybe RFK assassination linked to organized crime.
Social media would go crazy. Everyone would be trying to make sense of it all, trying to fit this new information into what they already believe.
And we have to think about the families involved, too. These are real people whose lives have been forever changed by these tragedies. Imagine finding out that your suspicions were right, or that there are even more painful truths you didn't know.
It's a heavy weight to carry. And we have to be mindful of that.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about the potential impact, but what about the process itself? The executive order set some pretty tight deadlines, Rick.
Very tight. The intelligence community has 15 days to come up with a plan for releasing the JFK files, and 45 days for the RFK and MLK files.
So there are people working around the clock right now going through all these documents, trying to figure out what can be released and what needs to stay classified.
It's a massive undertaking.
And in just a few weeks, we could start seeing these secrets come to light.
That's right. We're about to enter a whole new chapter in this story.
Maybe these files hold the answers we've been searching for. Or maybe they'll just lead to more questions.
That's what makes it so exciting, isn't it? The unknown, the potential for discovery.
The fact that even in this day and age, there are still secrets waiting to be uncovered. And that's why we do what we do, right? The thrill of the chase, the pursuit of truth. But as we keep digging into these assassinations, there's another piece of the puzzle we need to look at. It really is wild, isn't it? all these years later, and people are still debating, speculating. These assassinations, it's like they just sparked something in us, this need to know more, you know? Like we just can't let it go.
Yeah, it's like they hit a nerve, exposed something about how we see the world.
Do you think it's because, well, because these guys represented something? JFK, RFK, MLK, they were all about hope, change, progress.
Right, and then suddenly they're gone, taken from us in these violent, seemingly senseless acts. It's hard to accept that, that these larger-than-life figures could be struck down so randomly.
So then we try to find meaning. We look for something, some explanation that makes more sense than just random chance.
Exactly. And that's where conspiracy theories come in. They offer a way to impose order on chaos, to feel like even though these terrible things happened, at least someone was in control.
It's like we'd rather believe in a big, complex conspiracy than accept the idea that sometimes bad things just happen for no reason.
And the media, well, let's just say they haven't exactly helped to dispel those theories.
But yeah, the media loves a good mystery.
The constant coverage, the speculation, the dramatic reenactments, it all feeds into that sense of intrigue. And then social media comes along and it just explodes.
It's like a runaway train. One little piece of information gets thrown out there and suddenly everyone's an expert.
And it's hard to separate fact from fiction, especially when you're dealing with events that are so emotionally charged.
Speaking of which, do you think there's a chance these files could actually make things worse? I mean, what if they don't contain any big revelations? Could that actually fuel more conspiracy theories?
It's definitely possible. Some people, no matter what's in those files, they'll find a way to interpret it as proof of a cover-up. The absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence.
Right. So how are we supposed to know what to believe? It feels like we're constantly bombarded with information, and half of it's probably made up.
You're not wrong. It's more important than ever to be critical thinkers, to question everything, to look at sources carefully.
But that's easier said than done, especially with something like this, where there are so many strong emotions involved.
Absolutely. But it's important to remember that history is messy. It's rarely black and white. There are always multiple perspectives.
That's what makes it so fascinating, though. We're not just trying to uncover facts. We're trying to understand how people interpreted those facts, what they meant to them.
Exactly. It's about understanding the human element of history, the motivations, the fears, the beliefs that shaped the course of events.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap things up. This deep dive, it's been a roller coaster. We've talked about the executive order, the lives of those who are lost, and the enduring tower of these events to kind of haunt us.
And we're still waiting for those files to be released. Who knows what we'll find when they are.
Maybe answers, maybe more questions. But one thing's for sure. This story, it's far from over. So to everyone listening, stay curious, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep an open mind. And as always, thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.